Welcome to the Cowboy Chronicles, the Oklahoman's Oklahoma State football podcast. I am your host, Scott Wright, joined this week by Marshall Scott, sometimes known as Scott Marshall.
Yes,
on occasion.
On probably whenever we go down to Fort Worth on Saturday, I'll probably be Scott Marshall then.
Probably so. Yeah. Pistols firing for this guy right here. You can follow all of his work there. Marshall Scott OK, which I'm a big fan of, the OK on the end of the Twitter handle.
Yeah, really just
X
wanted
handle.
Marshall Scott, and I tracked the guy down who's got it, messaged him on Facebook because he hadn't used it in a long time. He told me something about like I'd be impersonating him or something, so I just gave up. And I was like, all right, well, I guess I'm from Oklahoma.
There you
Okay,
go.
but
Yeah.
you rock the OK as well.
Same issue with not being able to get my own name. So, is what it is. Anyway, Marshall's here this week. He's another member of the Lost Episodes gang. There's one of those out there somewhere that was probably the best one we ever recorded.
Yeah, I think
of all time.
It would have won some awards had it gone out
Definitely.
there, just didn't make it.
Didn't make it. But we'll get into all sorts of interesting things that are going on with his Oklahoma State football program. I do want to give a salute to Zach Roy, who was the winner of the score prediction contest. All you had to do last week was pick Arizona State, and you won, and Zach did that. So this beer is for you, and Zach, this is a neon watermelon that I'm going to enjoy here. Running out of new things to try here at Stone Cloud, so I'm branching out a bit. Not typically a fruity beer type of guy, but I'm going to give it a shot today. And what'd you go with, Mark?
I just went with the Stone Cloud Light. Not a big drinker. We've got a basketball game to cover here in a little bit, as well as football player interviews. So
yes,
just keep it nice and easy for the day.
Nothing wrong with that. Very smart. Okay, so jump in. Put your score prediction for OSU TCU in the comments on YouTube. You can win a beer that we'll drink for you on the next podcast. I don't need that right now. We're gonna talk about I think the hottest topic of the day.
Okay.
Mike Gundy's thoughts on critical fans. Do you think was he talking broadly about all fans who complain, or you think was there like a subset of unhappy people that he was trying to target with his comment saying that most people are weak and want to point fingers and can't pay their bills?
Yeah, it's tough to say exactly who he was referencing. You could imagine portions of the Oklahoma State fan base who are not very happy right now.
Right.
But with that being said, you actually asked the question that got him on such a tangent.
Right.
It really had little to do with the question at the point that he got to the parts where people are now talking about.
Right.
So it's sort of tough to say exactly what he was talking about, but obviously goes off the thing that's drawing the most headlines right now is that he said that people who complain sometimes can't pay their bills and a supplier for their family. It was a
take
stretch.
Care of their families, their failures, and yes.
Yeah, that was certainly a choice of words, and one that he really didn't have to talk about because again, it had little to do with the question.
So as a group, we all get together, divide up the audio, transcribe the entire Mike Gundy press conference every week. I don't know who had that section, but I feel bad for them because it was 834 word answer to a question that I asked for just for the context. I was wanting to know if the early part of his coaching career, when as he said he went 11 years before he was on a team that won more than 5 games. I asked if the early failures being on some bad teams as an assistant coach helped him in the way that he manages wins and losses as a head coach, because he's talked multiple times how he's can't show a lot of emotion after losses, things like that, and he doesn't. That bothers a lot of fans too, but that's a separate subject. I was asking about the early part of his coaching career and how it impacted him. He basically said it didn't really matter at all because being a head coach is completely different than being an assistant coach, which wasn't really what I was going for. But then that was sort of the end of that part of the conversation and the answer to my question, and then he went into his thoughts on fans in general.
Yeah.
And
he referenced a question Jenny asked a couple of questions back, but it still had little to do really with the question Jenny asked, but Jenny was more so just saying, your job happens in front of thousands of people. Right. That's not average for most people's jobs.
Yes. And
so then that's kind of where he was like Jenny said, and then he went off. I don't know. I don't know if Jenny's exactly co-signing.
I don't think she signed on for any of the thoughts on people that can't pay their bills.
Yeah, it was just it wasn't something you expect to hear on a Monday presser via Zoom while it's raining outside. I think all the takes out there are, have some legs to them of this guy makes $7.75 million.
Yes.
Much of that is thanks in large part to people who pay for tickets, fund NIL, things along that nature, and those same people are some people who are complaining about the team being 0-6 in conference play
Yes.
and having one player gain more yards than OSU's entire offense on Saturday. So it was just it was a decision. It was definitely a decision to say that in the manner that he did say it.
Yes, and to kind of address it even more clearly, there was clearly something. This was clearly something that he wanted to get off his chest. It felt like, because he did completely come back to something that happened like 5 or 10 minutes earlier to go farther into detail about it. So I don't know, weird weather morning.
Yep.
It was on Zoom, audio only. We couldn't see his face. Didn't have his camera on. He was very short with us at the beginning.
Yeah, I transcribed the beginning, and I was like, we did 5 minutes apiece today, and I did like 8 questions in those 5 minutes. And I was like, oh, this is not going to be a very long thing. So that was odd for him to then say, hey, here's 800 words for you.
Exactly. Yeah. So it was all around a very odd press conference, and now I haven't. You of course live in Stillwater. You've been working all day on this and dealing with the reaction to it. I had to get my work done as quickly as possible so I can get in the car and drive up here so we can do this. So I haven't been able to follow along on Twitter, but it sounds like this has definitely fired up a subset of fans on some pretty significant level.
Yeah, it seems like in a weird way it really brought the fans together. Nobody's complaining about whether the offense is the issue, whether the defense is the issue. Alan Bowman hadn't really been mentioned a ton.
Right.
Now everybody's pretty full. There are a couple people who are like, I see what he was trying to say, and I defend that, and I think that's always going to happen. But and sort of towards the end of his answer, he was like trying to get Oklahoma State fans to buy in after potentially calling them poor.
Yes.
So that was interesting. That was another interesting tactic that he did. But I think the overwhelming sentiment on social media has been of one mind that was a pretty crazy thing to say.
Yes. I would agree. That's certainly what I've seen for the most part to this point, and it's like I said, there are going to be people that kind of, if you followed it enough, you can kind of read through a lot of what he says and see what he's trying to do. Yeah. And I get that there are he was trying to make the kind of the common stereotypical joke about people in their basement, on their computers all the time. And
PFB's gotten a lot of that over the years.
Oh, sure, exactly. So I think he was trying to pull off a comment like that, and I don't think that I don't think he got there.
Yeah, and I think it's just somewhat relating to like firestorms that Mike Gundy has caused every once in a while. The Ollie stuff from Big 12 Media Days, whenever he said 1,000 times, like. If that was a crazy thing to say, but if you're like, okay, I see what he was actually trying, the core of what he was trying to say.
Yeah.
In this instance, I'm not sure I totally understand the core of what he was trying to say, other than stop complaining. We're 0-6, deal with it. I don't know.
Right. No. Same. Very hard to dissect exactly where he was going with this one, and I rarely find myself feeling that way. You can usually understand his motivation, even if it's goofy stuff like. He had the 1 year a few years ago where every comment that was about fans or something that was said on social media, it was making fart noises.
Yeah.
There's always interesting things with Mike Gundy to try to wrap your head around and understand exactly where he's going with some things. And this is one of the more interesting ones.
Yeah. Interested to see how just kind of what going forward what happens with that, because that's certainly a firestorm.
We're here a little less than 4 hours after this was done, and we'll see when when the full ramifications of the fan response kind of sinks in at Oklahoma State, what direction they want to go and how they want to handle something like this. And my guess is Mike Gundy would probably rather just not address it at all.
Yeah.
Whether that comes down and is ultimately his choice, I guess we'll find out probably.
Yeah.
From here.
And I've heard suggested on the radio today that he should apologize. At this point, like, I love an apology every once in a while. I think it's okay to admit that you're wrong. But at this point, I'm not entirely sure what an apology does. I likened it on our forum to saying, it's like saying, with all due respect, before saying something entirely very disrespectful. And then acting like, all right, that's good, right?
Yeah.
So, Yeah, it's like it's a weird catch-22, and like we said, we talk to him somewhat regularly, more than most fans do. So whenever he's saying stuff, a lot of times we'd be like, okay, this is what he meant. Like this is how he meant for this to come off. This is one of those things that I'm not entirely sure what he meant, unless it was, what he said in that instance.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, very interesting. We'll move on from that and put that behind us. Let's talk a little bit about the Arizona State game. The thing that we came into today's press conference that I was most interested to see was how he was going to, what was going to be his next step in the comments that he made in post-game about not liking the schemes. Said there were some things he didn't agree with, that sort of thing. Backed off that really quickly, right off the top, which also surprised me a little bit because they did give up over 500 yards, 300 passing, over 200 rushing, and really were never in the game once Arizona State got the ball in the second half. That said, I don't know what exactly to think about this team in general because of the way things are going. The defense is what it is.
Which is bad.
It is. It's bad. It's the yardage-wise the worst in Power 4, second worst in the nation. If it wasn't for Kent State really stamping their claim on that last spot, they'd be the worst defense in the country at the Division I level. And I mean, I guess you can say that the schemes were okay, and you're just horrible at tackling and horrible at getting in the right places, and guys aren't executing. He didn't really bite when I followed up and asked if it was the execution that he was frustrated with, but I don't know. I'm really at a loss for what to think about, what they think about their defense.
Yeah, I went back through I actually did this pregame on Saturday. I went through the media guide and just kind of looked at yards per carry because it's been such a big stat this year. Oklahoma State's yards per carry against, so the yards per carry the defense is giving up, is literally the worst in program history, going back to 1940, which I guess is when they started keeping such a stat. And that's not good. They're at 5.9 right now. I actually think that went down during the Arizona State game, which is crazy to think because you just think of Cam Scatabo pretty much getting what he wanted when he wanted.
Right.
So it actually went down a hair, but it's still the most. And there are only 2 other seasons where it's above 5. I think it's at 5.9 right now. There are only 2 other seasons where it's above 5, and that was 88, I believe, which shout out Barry Sanders, still won 10 games. And then I think it was 96 where maybe they won 4 games. So that's not good. The rush yards per game against is also up there. It's not the most in program history, but it's up there as well. And then they're also on pace to just give up the most rushing yards flat out by any team since 1940. So that's just the numbers don't lie in this scenario. This defense is not very good. Hasn't been very good for a little bit. And I honestly think, kind of like I said, in some weird ways, they took some steps forward against. Just because it wasn't 8 yards a carry, at least, like it had been. But yeah, the defense is just, I'm at a loss for word. If it's not scheme, if it's not, I don't know. I asked Gundy post-game, you guys have basically turned into a 4-down team. Nardo coming in, the whole thing was the 3-3-5. Is there any way to go back to 3-down linemen? And not that the defense was great last year, but it was better than this. And he basically said because of injuries, they don't have the backers to play a 3-3-5 right now, which that could also come down to recruiting a little bit whenever you dive too deeply into things. So defense is just in a rough spot, and I'm not sure at this point. I don't imagine it getting better, and I'm not really sure what they do from this point out.
Right. It feels like on the offensive side, it feels like you could probably find something that's missing.
Yeah.
Defensively, I just don't think you can. You're a team that's not always in the right position, and when you are in the right position, you're not making tackles all that well. I think PFF had them at like 18 missed tackles again this week, and their grades on there. And I don't dive fully into I don't buy in fully to PFF stuff, but their grades on tackling have been miserably like below 50 for like multiple weeks in a row now. Yeah. So,
and they'll point to obviously the injuries, and the injuries certainly haven't helped this defense.
Right.
It's made them probably significantly worse. But even kind of before they were injured, they were kind of giving up a lot of yards anyways.
Right.
And just to think to the K-State game where they had Nick Martin for the majority of the game, that was kind of where this snowball started rolling.
Exactly.
So Yeah, I'm at a loss for words. I'm kind of tired of writing about it because it's like
Right.
the defense did the same thing that did the last 4 weeks.
Yeah.
It's still bad. What do you want from me? So that's kind of where I
Right.
am with it.
Yeah, and not to belabor the point, but there's no way to frame they can fix this.
Yeah.
And it is what it is. I guess the only good news this week is that you play a team that would rather throw the ball than run the ball.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that helps you, and maybe they go away from their tendencies and try to take advantage of Power 4's worst rushing defense.
Yep.
They don't have the superstars in the backfield. Obviously, Josh Hoover is at quarterback, kind of the guy that holds that together. He's leading the Big 12 in passing yards. I think like 6th nationally in total passing yards. And I tried to get into that a little bit today with Gundy in terms of just an offense with a different type of skill set, and he didn't really bite into that one much.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, the safeties are beat up too, so maybe it doesn't matter this week. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think something that okay, maybe this team's not going to run on Oklahoma State. At the same time, Baylor had a running quarterback, so that's totally out the window. But
Right.
Pendergrass had a career day.
Yes.
I think it's the BYU running back, I think, had a career day against
Right.
Oklahoma State. So I'm not really sure it matters if you're good or even if you have ran the ball all year.
Right.
Best way of action is probably just turning around and handing it off to whoever's back there because you're probably going to get at least 5 yards.
Yeah. You're good for 5.9 a carry, regardless of who you got standing back there. All right, I think that's probably enough about the defense until we come back around to
This has been a joyous podcast so far.
Right, exactly. We're about as much fun as the weather outside today. So, on the offensive side, we briefly discussed it. You feel like there's some things that they can figure out. Whether they can actually put it together and have a game plan good enough to go and outscore TCU. I don't know. I don't know how closely you watch betting lines.
Not very.
So yesterday afternoon, I put them in the paper every Monday. So Sunday afternoons, I start looking for when they're coming down. It was 7.5, TCU by 7.5 when I first found something early afternoon. And by the time we were actually putting out the paper, which our actual print deadline is like 5 something, it was already double digits, and I haven't even looked at it today because things have been so crazy. But there's not a lot of confidence in this Oklahoma State team on a national level.
Yeah, and offensively, like you said, I think one or two things. You just kind of feel like a big play is possible. I think that's kind of like the hope of the offense is that Brendan Presley, Dejon Stribling, Ollie Gordon, obviously, those guys are capable of just going Herculean at some point in the game,
Right.
and making a big play and that kind of gaining momentum and stuff like that. But as far as lines go, it doesn't seem like Oklahoma State's really been in. They're in the BYU game for sure. You
Right.
wonder how much of that was Garrett Rangel.
Yeah.
Since he got asked today about, I think you asked it,
Yeah.
about Allen potentially running more, and he just said that's. It basically sounded like he's like, well, now it's no good at it. Like, what's the point of that?
Right.
And I to some extent agree on that. It's just there's a lot not going well. Brendan Presley is still going well.
Yes.
Both post game and in game.
Yes.
Still love Brendan Presley. So I guess if you're an Oklahoma State fan, just watch Brendan Presley. Maybe cover the score, cover everything else, and just watch Brendan Presley.
Just watch 80 run around and do his thing. And I was a little surprised they got away from throwing to him a bit more than I expected. I thought they might go really hard and try to get him the record at home. So now, as the journalist side of me who I don't root for teams, I don't root for players, but I do root for stories. I hope that he does not break the record at TCU because I think it would be phenomenal if he does it on senior day at Boone Pickens Stadium against Texas Tech.
Yeah, I think if you're Brendan Presley, you probably just want it. And he said as much to us that he's not thinking about it.
Right.
But I think if you're Brendan Presley's family, you're just wanting it no matter how it comes.
Exactly.
I imagine teams at this point are bracketing him, kind of like Gundy's mentioned.
Oh, yeah.
So it's probably tough for him to get the ball. I was a little worried about him when he took that targeting that was not called targeting.
Right.
But that's just kind of classic Brendan Presley that he just pops up. He was a little, by his standards, was slow to get up on that play, and then still got up and did a little first down dance. So
Right, yes.
I don't know how the guy does it, but I think at home it obviously is that much sweeter, but kind of running out of games. So I think if think if you're a Brendan Presley fan, you're just like, hey, let's just get these however many catches you need left, and let's get this record and move on.
Yeah, exactly. I would agree with that, and whenever it comes, it's absolutely deserving. And I think you made this comment the other day, and I absolutely agree. Really going to miss talking to that guy every week.
Yeah, he's even in losses, he's been so good.
Yes.
He's kept things in such good perspective. And then whenever things are going well, he's talking about candy and what kind of pizza pockets he likes and stuff like that. So,
bowling and all
so,
sorts of fun things.
Yeah, he's like an all-time, and he's been compared a lot. I think Barry was maybe doing a story, compared a lot to Malcolm Rodriguez, and it's just kind of like an Oklahoma kid who shouldn't be as good as he is, but has just found a way and just keeps working. And I think in a lot of ways this program has been built on Brendan Presley's, and he's kind of the latest and the biggest shining star that this team's got right now.
Does he play in the NFL?
I think Gundy said this a couple of weeks ago. I think it's similar to Malcolm. I think I'm not sure he gets drafted, but I think he's going to get on a roster, and some coach is going to be like, hey, I kind of want this kid to at least stick somewhere. So I think he's got a shot. Obviously, his size is going to be, and he doesn't have his, players his size nowadays can make a living in the NFL. Think Tyreek Hill, but he's not as straight line speed as a lot of those guys are. But his side-to-side quickness, his catching ability, I think he's got a shot, and I'm hopeful that he does. But I think it's going to be tough just given his size. But I kind of think, like Gundy said, whenever a coach has the chance to work with him and kind of sees what he's about, I think he's got a definite shot of sticking somewhere.
I agree, because he can do so many things, like Malcolm. Malcolm, you can't return punts with Malcolm, but you can have him blocking for the punt returner. Brennan is going to step out there. He'll go be the gunner on your punt team if you want him to. He's going to do anything that's asked of him. He's capable of doing anything that's asked of him. Obviously reliable. Catching the ball on punt returns if they need him to do that. He can return kickoffs and is obviously very good at that.
Tough as nails. I think he's got to be tough given his size, and he's got that going for him.
Coming back to, you talked about him not getting up as quickly as we usually see him. It's been a long time, because when we first started seeing him getting these kind of hits, we were asking about it pretty frequently. So probably like 2021, 2022, we were talking to him quite a bit about it, and he hasn't had to tell these stories in a long time because we're so used to it now. But it's always motivation for him to get up quicker than the guy that just hit him. And I always found that fascinating, that he has the awareness after taking a hit like that, because some of these look really bad. Because for one, he's so light that he'll go flying and doing like 360s in the air after he gets hit and things like that. But to have the awareness to pop up and just make sure that the defender, as he's getting up, sees that the guy you just thought you murdered is up and walking and doing fine.
Yeah, and I think if I would have got hit as hard as he got hit Saturday on that ball across the middle, I think not only would I have stayed down, I think I would have just quit football entirely, just straight up.
No,
that's it for me.
No, I'm with you there.
So it's so many impressive things. Can't say enough good things about him. Just not because he's such a good football player, but like we said, in post game afterwards, he's always got such good perspective. Yeah, it's hard not to root for Brendan Presley.
Yeah, absolutely. The only disappointing thing has been that he's been kind of a face of the program during this losing streak, and the only time we're getting to talk to him right now is after losses. So you don't get to have the fun conversations that we would have on like a Monday after practice with him and those sorts of things. So and it's hard to ask about his real perspective of this record, because you're talking to him right after his team just got beat, and he doesn't really want to be that guy, and understandably so. So that's the only thing that bothers me. I'd like him to win a game so we could talk to him after a win, and that would be a little bit more fun. All right. Anything else that from today, this crazy day that we've been through here, that we need to cover before we get into the Stone Cloud six-pack?
Not that I can think of. You mentioned, he went back on this scheme talk, said that was an issue, and then it's like kind of like, what is the issue then if it's not schemes, if it's not effort? I guess nothing. We've already discussed all the not fun stuff, so no, I guess I'm ready to move on.
All right. Very good. We will do that. We'll jump into the Stone Cloud six-pack here. A little bit of kind of some off the wall questions this week. Now I did bring up this was a question last week with McLean when he was here, And we talked about Brennan. The question was, does he get the record this week? So now that he still hasn't done it, do you think he gets the record this week?
I haven't fresh up on it. How many catches away is he?
8 away.
8 away?
8 to tie, 9 to break the record.
Okay.
No, 7 to tie, 8 to break the record.
Okay. I think he gets it this week.
Yeah.
I think back to the Houston game last year. I think he had like 17 catches. There just becomes times throughout the year where they're like, hey, we've got to go to Brendan Presley, and I think the offense was so rough this past season that I think one of those times it's got to be coming.
Yeah.
And honestly, it just kind of makes sense for the team as a whole at this point. Hey, the year's not going well. Let's get this kid this record. Let's have a little bit of fun. So I think he gets it this week.
And I don't know if it's just, I'm sure it is just coincidence, but it seems like those really crazy catch number of games that he has are on the road.
Yeah, I feel because I think the Texas Bowl again last year. I think
Texas Bowl
had a ridiculous
at
amount.
Houston, and then at Baylor he had 15 the other day.
So and also loves the Lone Star State apparently.
Yes, apparently so. That's exactly right. So yeah, it seems fitting that he would do that. All right, well, with that we go to the official 3 questions to start the Stone Cloud 6-pack here from Stone Cloud in Stillwater. A guy that we have not talked about, Milwaukee Smith, the true freshman backup quarterback. We saw him in his first action.
Good job by you, by the way, nailing that.
I've been practicing for an amount of time that is embarrassing to say. So the question is, over or under 9.5 snaps for Smith at quarterback this week? We saw him. I actually didn't even go count how many he had last week.
I think it was 7. I think the drive was 7.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
I think I'm going over, and I guess I said this the last time I was on the podcast. It might have been the podcast that never aired, but
yeah,
I said it's about time to start playing him just outright. We didn't ask Gundy about him today. I think we got wrapped up in other stuff. But post game, he was kind of non-committal in saying that who the starting quarterback would be moving forward. So I think he was somewhat similar when talking about Rangel going into the BYU game. Not saying he's going to start, but I imagine that there's, at the very least, a short leash on Alan Bowman. So yeah, I think there will be over that. I think he's going to start playing more because the season is, for the most part, over. Unless you went out here, it's not looking great. So I think I'm going Smith over by a significant margin.
Interesting. I'm going over. I don't think it'll be a lot over, but I think he gets a drive or two when it's not mop-up time this week. I think that you want to give this kid a look against some real defenses and the real speed of the game, for lack of a better term. And I think maybe we see him in the first half for a series. Maybe we see him early second for a series. I think they stick with Bowman for the most part, but I think you give him some more significant opportunities than what you've done, and start working toward maybe at some point in the final 2 games. You got a bye week coming up. Could be an opportunity to pull the trigger and make him your starter. So I'll be very curious to see how they handle that, because the first game from out of the bye week will be Alan Bowman's senior day against Texas Tech, and how much do you care about something like that versus what you need to do for your program? It's a tough situation. So.
And unfortunately, it's about Alan Bowman's 9th senior day. So
it really is, yeah.
So, but yeah, I think, and kind of like you mentioned, the bye week's probably a good thing. That was similar to Rangel, but Gundy said post Arizona State that Smith is getting just as many reps in practice as Allen is. I guess we don't know how truthful statement is, but it kind of seems like it's trending towards him playing more. But yeah, I think those are good things to note senior day and things like that.
Yeah. All right, moving on to question number 2: true or false? Dajuan Lofton plays this week, and just for the context for the listeners, he's at 4 games. He is eligible to redshirt. You play him in one of the final 3, his career will be over at the end of the season. You pull him out now, you've got him and Gavin Freeman both redshirting and coming back as some veteran receivers to join whoever might be back. The majority of the group has another year at least left, so maybe you don't worry too much about depth. Maybe you do, based on not knowing what's going to happen in the transfer portal, all sorts of other things. But I think it's an interesting situation that Lofton is in, because it feels like he would have the power to make that decision if he wants to redshirt. So, true or false? Dajuan Lofton plays on Saturday.
I'm going to lean false. I think there's a chance that they just say, hey, kind of not in the plans going forward. But whenever he has gotten opportunities. He's played really well. I think they really like Gavin Freeman. I wonder, just because we haven't seen them a ton, but like Cam Hurd, Tyke Andrews, that kind of class of receivers,
Right.
kind of what they feel about that group. If they feel one of those guys is ready to go in the slot next
Right.
year, maybe that gives them more reason to say, hey, DeJuan, let's just get you out there and you go play your last 3 games and have a good time. So, but I'm kind of just leaning, because I asked Gundy about this last Monday, and he went on a tangent where he's saying guys just need 5 years. That would clean all this up, which
Right.
he made a solid point there.
He did.
So, yeah, but I think I'm going that he will not play just because it sort of sounded like in that answer that I talked about with Gundy that this is obviously something that they've put some thought into,
Right.
and I imagine that they wouldn't, based on how the season's going.
Right. I'm with you. False. I also I don't think he plays. If he's back at Oklahoma State next year is a completely different question. But I think they like him. He's shown his talent. He played outside receiver some at Virginia Tech, so maybe he could find his way into a spot there if say someone like Stribling decides to head to the NFL or Rashad Owens. I think that there's a spot for him at Oklahoma State next year, and I think that I would assume he feels like he can prove a little bit more with a full season to go and do that for his football playing future.
Yeah, he knows that when given the opportunity, he's had some shining moments. So
Right.
I imagine he'd be cool with a redshirt as well to say, hey, maybe if I get a full season of this, who knows what my future looks like. So
Right.
I think he'd probably be game.
Yeah, and we know Leon Johnson last year would have loved that.
Yeah.
Didn't work out for him.
Yeah. But kind of totally different season, obviously. They
Right,
kind of
yeah.
needed Leon to play to
Yes.
continue this streak.
Exactly.
The streak's going the opposite direction right now.
On Saturday, based on the participation report, I did not see this with my own eyes, just Oklahoma State's participation report, Jonathan Agamadu made his first appearance as a true freshman, was the only one other than Milwaukee Smith to get on the field now that we're in that 4-game window where they can basically play anybody that hasn't played to this point. So I thought that was interesting. Obviously, linebackers and safeties are usually kind of the guys that you see helping out on special teams a lot. So my question is, the question I typed in and sent to you was the next true freshman to appear in a game who hasn't played yet, or is this it? Is there another one out there that you think would squeeze in somewhere?
Yeah, it's almost tough to say because there's we don't get a lot of updates on these guys throughout the year.
Right.
So Gunnar Wilson, he's another linebacker. Is he healthy? I don't know. We haven't talked.
Right.
It's not a question that I'm just asking because who's thinking about Gunnar Wilson at a time like this? Unfortunately.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm going to lean that they're probably done just because you'd think with that 4-game limit of the Arizona State, they'd start playing, that anybody who was going to play that they'd put in by now. So I think I'm going to lean that they're probably done putting freshmen in, but I honestly wouldn't be surprised if they played 1 or 2 more.
There's a guy that I'm curious about, and again, he falls into the same category you just mentioned with Wilson. Is he healthy? I know that Trey Griffiths had some injury stuff that kept him out a little bit in the spring. Don't know what his health status is right now. He's a guy that I think could maybe pop up, and I'd be, especially if you end up having to pull a guy like Lofton, maybe it opens a spot for you to use another receiver in some fashion. So that's the name that I'll throw out there. Although, even though I wrote the question, I lean more with you that this is probably everybody we're going to see, and maybe Agamadu gets some increased reps and. Don't know that maybe necessarily we'll see him on defense at linebacker, but more special teams, get those guys used to the speed of the game and all those sorts of things.
I really like Griffiths, by the way. Last year I did this, called it Friday Night Highlights on our site. I haven't done it this year because honestly it's kind of a pain to keep up with. But just kind of going through his stats and watching his film and stuff like that, he looks the part. So I think I'm really excited for Trey Griffiths. But I don't know what their thinking would be about using receivers at a time like this.
Yeah, same. Right there with you. All right, well, that brings us to the backside of the Stone Cloud 6-pack, and we get to revisit a draft that made it on the lost episode. For the context, I watched on the return trip from BYU the Iron Claw about the family name that I keep forgetting.
Von Erichs.
The Von Erichs. Yes, wrestling family, and in the movie there was a 3-on-3 tag team match, and that got me thinking about my podcast. That's where that led me. So here we are. We're going to draft our ultimate WWE 3-man tag team, And as always, you are up on the first pick.
I think I'm gonna. So you mentioned we've done this
Right,
before.
yes.
I think I'm gonna change mine up.
Ooh, changing it up.
But I'm still gonna go with number one because Little Kid Marshall would not. Jeff Hardy, number one.
Okay.
Favorite wrestler of all time. Did crazy stuff. Kind of wrestled like a cruiserweight, a little guy, but he's like 6'4", like 210. So big dude, does cool stuff. Not great on the mic, but just had something about him that made people care. So I'm going Jeff Hardy with my number one pick. Multi-time tag team champion, by the way. So in this 3-on-3 dance,
Great.
Got a good shot at that.
Great situation to be in. I think that's a good start. I'm also going childhood memories with my first pick. You know, I grew up in the era of like when things got really big in the mid '80s. It was Hulk Hogan, Randy Macho Man Savage, Ted DiBiase, all kinds of guys like this. My favorite guy at the time was the Junkyard Dog. Loved everything about him.
JYD.
Exactly, incredibly unique, and he was the favorite guy. You had the chain, had all the different things that he did. Running, headbutting guys down on all fours, all sorts of fun things that I found phenomenally entertaining. And so, like you, to serve childhood Scott, I'm going with Junkyard Dog as my first pick.
All right, pick number two.
Number two.
I think I went a different guy in the same era last time. This time, I think you might have taken this guy last time. I'm going to go with Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Oh, very nice.
Glass shatters, people go crazy. I think, I don't know if this is still true, maybe different now with all the money that's flown in, but I think at least at his time, it's the biggest draw in wrestling history. Whenever Stone Cold took place, it was a lot of fun beating up Mr. McMahon, kind of the anti-hero that was kind of like a new, I guess the NWO was doing that and WCW,
Right.
but it was kind of the WWE's first anti-hero. It used to be, take your vitamins and you can get big and strong like Hulk Hogan, which
Right.
we learned later that he was taking more than just vitamins.
Yeah.
But just amazing draw, great on the mic. Stone Cold Stunner, everybody loves it. I actually, what I learned, what flipping somebody off was, I kicked my brother in the nuts in front of my
Okay.
parents,
All right.
gave him the double birds, and then gave him a Stone Cold Stunner. He's older than me, so I definitely didn't win the fight that
Right.
ensued. But my parents were like cool with the rest of it, but like, hey, can't flip him off.
Don't flip him
And
off.
so I was like, I didn't know Stone Cold did it. So
Right.
So so I'm gonna go Stone Cold number two.
Very nice. That's listen, in a match like this, a three-man tag team, you need a good finishing move, and I don't know that there's a better finishing move out there than the Stone Cold Stunner. It's definitely my favorite.
Yeah, it's got to be up there. It's got to definitely be up there.
Oh man, now as you mentioned, I
like to keep you on your toes.
yeah, you threw me off with that one. I was fully prepared to be able to take Stone Cold, who I would say probably, obviously, I was like late high school, early college
I heard that was a great time to kind of get into it.
It was a phenomenal time. That's what it was. Stone Cold and those guys that brought me back into it, because after the late '80s, I kind of faded out. But those guys brought me back, and that's, oh man, you're making me work here. I'm gonna go back to the old days, to another guy that I was a huge fan of, just because I found him fascinating for his uniqueness, and that is Andre the Giant.
Good.
Great
in Princess Bride as well.
Phenomenal in Princess Bride. He was great in the ring. All of he and Hulk went at it quite a few times. I think it's not exactly really a finishing move, but if Andre gets on top of you, you're not kicking out of that.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna stick with him for my number two pick. And I think that gives me some good flexibility with a variety of guys so far.
Yeah,
So
hard to keep that guy down. Just
that's
in general.
exactly right. Number three, final pick for your three-man tag team.
So I don't want to take The Rock because I took him in the Lost Files, but I sort of think I'm going to take The Rock. For
Okay.
my third pick. Just,
All right,
the People's Champ. Outstanding work. Came in as a babyface. People didn't like that. Started
Right.
chanting "Die Rocky Die" at him. And then he turns into an awesome anti-hero.
Right.
Millions of catchphrases. Jabroni. Love the
Oh, yeah.
term jabroni. Mike Gundy, maybe instead of calling people poor, should just call them jabronis.
Yeah,
that might have gone off better. So yeah, obviously he's turned his wrestling career into, say what you will about his movies. I like Jumanji personally,
Big
but
fan.
some people maybe don't enjoy his style of movie. But at the same time, he's making a killing. So yeah, I'm gonna go with The Rock. Excellent on the mic. Probably, the best. I think he's the best person on the mic maybe ever.
I could get behind that.
Yeah, because he could read the phone book and you'd be entertained by it. So yeah, I'm going with The Rock number 3 to pair with Stone Cold and Jeff Hardy. Who's probably just kind of wondering why he's there, but he's there for me. That's what he's there for.
Exactly. Nothing wrong with that. I didn't mention him when I was talking about Stone Cold earlier, but it was their duel that had really brought me back to wrestling in my high school years, late high school. So big fan of The Rock, the People's Elbow.
The most electrifying move in sports entertainment history, the People's Elbow.
Exactly, that's right. Yeah, everything about him was entertaining to me, and I'm with both Jumanji movies that he was part of. Both me and my son, big fans.
Yeah, those movies had no right being as good as I think they were. Anyways. I'm not sure everybody has the same view on those Jumanji movies.
Yeah.
But then in the second one, they basically all had to act as somebody else in the movie because they mash up and did different things. But, I watched them back to back one day and I was like, I bet this was pretty tough. I bet this is pretty tough to do.
Right.
So yeah, and there's some movies that aren't as great that he's acted in.
Agreed.
But Jumanji, I will never say a bad thing about it.
No, I'm the same. In number 2, I think he's Danny DeVito's character at one point.
I think so. I think you're right.
That. Yeah. So yeah, phenomenal, phenomenal actor. Oh man, so that brings me to the end. I was hoping The Rock might last for my final pick. Oh man, I'm gonna go a little bit out of character here for a guy from the same era as those guys. That's not really all that popular. I'm gonna finish up with Mick Foley.
Oh, I love Mick Foley.
And listen, you don't know who's going to show up to the ring. You can't prep for that.
You're probably hoping Dude Love, but you might get Cactus Jack.
That's exactly right. You don't know which one. Mankind might show up. You have no clue. The dude put himself through so much pain. Getting thrown off a ladder onto thumbtacks on the mat, and through tables, and all sorts of different crazy things that he was willing to do with his body that made him phenomenally entertaining. I can't believe the man's still alive at this point, honestly.
Yeah, so when I was first getting into wrestling, my cousin was the one who got me into it. I got a VHS tape of the Royal Rumble 2000. I don't recommend you buying your 5-year-old a VHS tape of the Royal Rumble 2000, but I talked my parents into it. I got it, and he had a match with Triple H. It was a street fight. It was in Madison Square Garden. Thumbtacks, and that very much opened my eyes to I was thinking wrestling as in the more traditional people standing in a ring fighting each other. Right. That was like nothing I'd ever expected. But yeah, Mick Foley does. He's done it all. It's sort of like Brendan Presley, who doesn't have maybe the body to be a football player, being 5'10" or whatever he is. Mick Foley's not your stereotypical jacked dude, but tremendous storyteller in the ring. And is willing to literally do whatever. So yeah, I think that's great. I'm never signing up to lay in thumbtacks, maybe ever. I stepped on one once. That was enough for me. I could not imagine falling onto a bed of them. So yeah. Right.
Listen, I stepped on a Lego once and it was game over for me. I'm not messing around with anything that's gonna poke into my body like that. So, any honorable mentions that you thought about taking with that last pick, maybe?
So let's see. Last time I took Finn Balor because he's kind of the Jeff Hardy of right now for me. Really like Finn Balor. Triple H, I think he's kind of one of my dad's favorite always. He was a great heel. You always hated Triple H whenever I was a little kid. Was really good at being a jerk that you didn't want to win, but at the same time you watched because you wanted to see him get beat up. Yes. And now he kind of runs the show, and they're arguably having the most successful stint ever with him running the thing. So Triple H, very good. You can go Cena. I thought about going just because of the RKO when we mentioned finishers, Randy Orton. But I've got the Stone Cold Stunner. I don't need another variation of a cutter. So,
that's fine. That's fair.
I think those are some of my honorable mentions.
Yeah.
The Undertaker. Did you take him last time?
I think I did, yeah. I think I took him last time. I know we discussed him because we talked about his involvement with the Big 12.
Yeah, just the aura of the Undertaker. Right. Hearing the gong, the lights going out, that'll make people go crazy as well anytime that happens. So
yeah,
he should be up there as well.
Yeah, right there with you on that. So good stuff. Real quick, because you brought up Cena. better actor, Cena or Dwayne The Rock Johnson?
Ooh. So Cena is good. I think Cena's good in the right role. Blockers. Have you seen Blockers?
I have not seen Blockers.
So he's a dad of a girl going to prom, and the group of girlfriends makes a sex pact, and so the parents are trying to like stop that from happening.
Right.
And so John Cena's the father of a tomboy, basically, and he's hilarious throughout that. I think there's one more John Cena movie. He's on Trainwreck, which he's pretty good in Trainwreck.
Yep, that was an entertaining.
I think Trainwreck was good one watch, maybe like multiple watches. I'm not really into Trainwreck, but I'll watch Blockers pretty much anytime. So I think I'm going to go with The Rock just based on his full, not discography, because that's what it's called whenever it's music.
Filmography.
I think I'm going to go with The Rock, but I think John Cena's definitely in a similar realm. It's funny because whenever The Rock went to Hollywood, then he came back to wrestle John Cena once. John Cena was on him for being a part-timer. He was like, oh, and he went to Hollywood, and then John Cena did the exact same thing. So, who's ever calling somebody a part-timer nowadays, whether that be maybe Roman Reigns or Cody Rhodes, those are probably the two most likely to differ Hollywood before too long. But I think that's healthy for wrestling. I think The Rock.
Yeah, I'm with you. There's another Cena movie that was more a kids movie. He was a fireman. Had John Leguizamo and somebody else were firemen with him, and there's like kid element and a love story, and it's all kind of corny, but he was really entertaining in it. He was.
I think he was in A Daddy's Home. Maybe it was the second one. Maybe it was the first one with Mark Wahlberg.
Possibly.
I think he was good in that as well. I think he's good at playing kind of the not dumb, but
meathead.
Yeah, the meathead. Fatherly figure type guy. As long as there's some comedy elements to it. Maybe he's got range. Maybe he can do some more deep acting. But I like seeing him in kind of that meathead role.
Yeah, agreed. All right. Well, with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. We're going to go have to talk to some football players here before too long. So we'll shut it down here on the Cowboy Chronicles. But thank you for joining us once again.
You bet.